history is once again being made in the United States with the first indictment of a former president. The charges themselves remain sealed, so we don't know exactly what they are, but they relate to payments made to an adult film star during the 2016 presidential election campaign. Joining me to discuss this case, if it will stand up in a proper court, and to unpick the details is legend of military history and political commentator Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, good evening. This is the sort of behaviour one would expect from a tin pot dictatorship or a South American country. What are the repercussions of today's indictment on free democracy in America?
Well, I think what we're going to do now is, see, this was a city prosecutor, not even an estate. So it'll be open season now for any emeritus president. So when Joe Biden leaves office, a prosecutor in Sacramento, California, or Biloxi, Mississippi, or Billings, Montana may file a writ and say, you know what, you broke the law here, there, on your dealings with Ukraine or China or Russia, or you used a bank wire transfer in our state, whatever slight relevance it would be to jurisdictional authority, you're going to have an open season on the out party. So this is exactly what the founders in the Federalist Papers warned against. But again, this isn't new. Donald Trump was the first president to be impeached in his first term since Andrew Johnson. And he was the first person to be impeached twice. He was the first person to have his home raided by the FBI when he left office. He was the first person to be tried in the Senate in an impeachment trial when he was a private citizen. So it's just a long pattern that the Democrats despise him, and no one knows in the country what their strategy is. It's either one of two things. They detest him so much that they feel that they have to destroy him, or they feel that they can weaken him and he will still get the nomination. The trial will be held up for a year or two, and then he will run against Joe Biden or the Democratic candidate as a weakened candidate in the general election. And then maybe a stronger candidate like DeSantis will not get the nomination, but Trump will get it, but will be mortally wounded during the general election.
What's your assessment of the Biden regime? The Democrats have gone after Trump since the day he got into office, and it seems to me that this is the most corrupt regime in American history. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's no overstatement. I mean, if you look at the Hunter Biden laptop or some of the associates that are on that laptop, what they have said about Joe Biden, when you look at the weaponization of what the FBI did going after in the Mar-a-Lago raid, going after parents at school board meetings, working with Twitter to suppress information, when you look at the way that the FBI seeded the Steele dossier, and there's a lot of these people like Christopher Wray are still there, they do these performance art raids, these virtue signaling raids against James O'Keefe at Operation Veritas, or Peter Navarro, a former Trump aide. So everything is weaponized now in the United States. The CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, the IRS. The IRS just went after Matt Taibbi at his home when he was testifying about abuses of the Biden administration's FBI. So it's a new idea. I think the rationale is that they feel as progressives or woke progressives that their ends are so noble and they're on the right side of what they call the right angle of history, that any means necessary to achieve them will be okay. So there's two laws in America. It's asymmetrical. If you're Donald Trump and you take papers out, you're going to have the FBI right. If you're Joe Biden and you had no authority to declassify them as vice president and they're scattered over several residences, there's no problem. And that's just the way it is.
What would you say, Victor, to those that say, you mentioned the word woke there, that this is all bluster, that woke is just people trying to be kind and people trying to look after other people and trying to and awaken themselves to racial inequality and gender inequality in the world? What is your criticism of woke, and what is woke?
Well, woke is a desire to, in theory, make everybody equal on the on the backside and the quality of result. And that used to be kind of a Marxist idea in the economic terms, but it's been transmogrified into sexual orientation and race, which they feel are permanent identifications. And therefore, because we're so fluid and upwardly mobile in this country, you can have a permanent class of victims with permanent grievances against their supposed or purported oppressors and victimizers. It's not a fuzzy, kind little movement. I mean, if you look at the transgendered movement, right now, we've had 6 mass murders in history where the shooter had a manifesto. This is the first one we've ever had where the authorities will not release the shooter in Nashville's manifesto because there's apprehensions that it is an unapologetic explanation of why this person killed 3 9-year-old children, for example, and 3 adults. We had a day of vengeance, and it was just now canceled, but they were not going to cancel on April 1st. We had a takeover of the Nashville gun people who wanted gun control in the Nashville legislature. We had some transgendered people break into the Texas legislature. We've had mobs swarming the Supreme Court justices' homes. We had an assassin turn up who was stopped from killing or trying to kill Judge Kavanaugh only because his sister talked him out of it through text. Where I work at Stanford, we had the law school mob shout down a federal justice and drive him off from his lecture. And then an administrator hijacked the podium and lectured the victim, the invited federal judge, that he was too divisive to expect that he should enjoy First Amendment rights at Stanford Law School. So it's an accelerating movement that doesn't have 51% support. And that's the context of these trials, because they feel there's going to be a reckoning. Should have been one in the 2022 midterms, but they dodged the bullet. But all the polls show that Joe Biden is very unpopular. None of his policies poll 50% on energy, on crime, on wokeness, on the border, on foreign policy. And there's going to be a historic reckoning, they fear, in 2024. So they look to these other issues, and but they don't ever talk about, this is why we need an open border. This is why we must cut back gas and oil. This is why the FBI has to do what it's doing. This is why identity politics and wokeness is good. This is why we got out of Afghanistan the way we did. This is why we're doing what we're doing. They never defend any of these policies because they know they're unpopular, because they're ideologues, and I guess they would rather be right and unpopular than wrong in their ideological view of things and popular. So they know they're unpopular.
A means to an end, if you will.
Yes.
You wrote the book A Case for Trump, where you described Donald Trump as a tragic hero in many ways. And I'm interested to know that, I don't hear a great amount of criticism for the way that he's behaved with his financial dealings in regards to Stormy Daniels. Steelman me where he could have really done better, because this is meat for the Democrats.
Yeah, well, the problem, Donald Trump has no margin of error. So, and he should know that the people despise him on the left to such a degree that any transaction, and rather than be very, very careful, he operates in a way that most politicians. So he had this liaison of some sort. He denies it. She signed a disclaimer that it didn't happen, but she was paid to sign it. And it was probably an attempt to shield his family from an embarrassment during the campaign. And he paid out of his own funds, so it didn't come out of the campaign. But nevertheless, it's what a lot of politicians do. I mean, when Monica Lewinsky was involved with Bill Clinton, they tried to get her a job at Revlon to buy her. This is what the sordid side of politics. But when it applies to Donald Trump, he should know better, that he's been the most audited, autopsy, censored, examined politician in American history. And in terms of actually what he's done wrong, morally, ethically, while he's in office, he hasn't done anything in comparison to the Biden consortium or Barack Obama got caught on a hot mic basically telling a messaging to Putin that he was willing to give up American missile defense, which he did do in Eastern Europe, if Putin would give him space during his reelection, which he did do. And then he invaded right after Obama was reelected. He invaded the Donbass and Crimea. So, but that's not a defense of Trump. It's just that he needed a much greater awareness of the degree of animosity and the degree to which people would warp and manipulate and undermine institutions to go after him.
So, Victor, this evening I started the program talking about what feels to me like a clown world, as you've just described, the total disparity between the way Democratic behavior and Republican behavior is, and this my personal fear of gender ideology for my own children and wokedom. Your advice, please, as to how to challenge this very pernicious ideological movement.
I think everybody, according to their station, has to realize that we're in an existential moment. These people are not democratic people anymore. It's not the Democratic Party of JFK or Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton even. These are hardcore Jacobin revolutionaries. And each person has to say from now on, no. And you're going to have to either retake the institutions that they have hijacked, Hollywood, professional sports, corporate boardroom, media, Silicon Valley, the university, or you're going to have to create alternate ones. Either way. But they are going to try to use the power that in this long march through our institutions to destroy people. They've destroyed women's sports here in the United States. They've destroyed the law schools. They've destroyed the big city prosecutors, and they don't care. And they're going to go after people until people say...
We're very, very sadly out of time. Thank you so much. And we do need to reclaim our institutions, and we need to take back society for everybody. Thank you so much for joining me at home, in the studio, and in your hearts.